Good morning, Willard Wildcats. Happy Wednesday, September 16th. We don't have any birthdays to celebrate, but we do have creativity and curiosity to talk about. And we also need to think about being inquirers, which means we ask questions. So I bet there are a lot of things that you're learning in your virtual classrooms that you're curious about or that give you creative ideas that you can use. So what I'm thinking today, the book that I read to you, kind of like yesterday's book, might give you some ideas about quilts. It's called The Quilt Story. Maybe you can make your own quilt by drawing it or cutting it out of paper or whatever it is you have in your space. And you can think of all your favorite things that you might want to include in a quilt. The Quilt Story, Toni Johnston and Tommy DePaola. And it says Abigail. A little girl's mother made the quilt to keep her warm when the snow came down long ago. She stitched the quilt by a yellow flame, humming all the time. She stitched the tails of the falling stars, and she stitched the name Abigail. So Abigail's quilt has stars in it. What would you put in yours? What's special to you? That's, as an inquiry, that's a question I have for you. Abigail loved the quilt. She wrapped it round her in the quiet dark and watched the winter skies. Sometimes she saw a falling star. Sometimes Abigail played in the woods near her home. She had tea, her dolls had tea, and the quilt had tea all over it. Sometimes she pretended the quilt was a gown. She wore it to town on her horse, clop, 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 and it tore. So her mother stitched it up once more. Do you have something at home that in your space that you like to play with and pretend that it's something different? Made-up games are always the most fun. Sometimes she played hide and seek with her sisters. She laughed and cried, "Don't peek," and hid under the quilt, and everyone found her. Sometimes Abigail was sick and she sneezed and sneezed. Then she slept under the quilt and she felt better. I wonder what's something that makes you feel comfortable and makes you feel better when you don't feel well. One day, Abigail's family moved away across wide rivers and over a rock-hard trail. The quilt went too, not stuffed in trunks with the blankets and the clothes. It kept the little girls warm from the wild winds, warm from the rain, and warm from the sparkling nights. They built a new house in the woods. Abigail's father built it with his hatchet, chop, chop, chop. He built her a new bed, chip, chip, chip. He made her a new horse too. He worked until curly shavings covered the floor and everyone sneezed and said, "Welcome home," and was glad. And Abigail felt sad. Why do you think she's feeling sad? New house, new horse, new bed. Everything smelled of fresh chops and chips, everything but the quilt. So her mother rocked her as mothers do, then tucked her in, and Abigail felt at home again under the quilt. One day when the quilt was very old and very loved, Abigail folded it carefully and put it in the attic. Everyone forgot it was there. A gray mouse came and loved the quilt. Her babies were born on top of it. They grew fat and gray in the warm stuffing. When they got hungry, they ate a falling star. A raccoon came and loved the quilt. She dug a hole in the corner with her black paws and hid an apple there. A cat came and loved the quilt, a patchwork cat. It rolled on the stars and stuffing spilled out like snow. Then the cat curled up in the snow and purred. "Kitty, kitty," called the little girl. She found her cat and she found the quilt. Splashed with patterns of sun, the little girl wrapped the quilt around her and she loved it too. "Can you make it like new?" she asked her mother. So her mother patched the holes and pushed fresh stuffing in. She stitched long tails on the stars to swish across the quilt again. One day, the little girl's family moved away across miles and miles of pavement and snaky gray highways. They found a new house, freshly cleaned, freshly waxed, freshly painted white. They unpacked and unpacked all night, and everyone sneezed on cardboard dust and said, "Welcome home," and was glad. And the little girl felt sad. Does this sound familiar? Everything smelled of white paint and boxes, everything but the quilt. So her mother rocked her as mothers do, then tucked her in, and she felt at home again under the quilt. Abigail. Well, Wildcats, I'm wondering what you might want to play with in a creative way that's in your space, or what special thing that you might want to hang on to that brings special memories for you. It could be anything. It could be a rock. It could be something that you found on a walk. It could be whatever your imagination desires. Wildcats, remember, we are safe, respectful, and responsible. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you on Thursday.